dark side of the story is a pathway to many narratives that people would...
Is it possible to learn the rest of this story?
Not from the gameplay.
Hello, and welcome to the Interstate Gamers Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, aka K-Slugs.
My name is Peter, aka Deal for Real, and I'm also your host.
Hell yeah. And welcome to the 45th episode of the Interstate Gamers and the 38th game review. We've got a special one in store for you guys. Can't wait to talk about it. Pete Boy, you got any announcements or anything going on?
Not really. I think I'm just kind of ready to introduce this game. I mean, honestly, not too much has been going on the past several weeks for obvious reasons. Hope everyone's staying safe out there, as always.
Yeah.
We didn't say that explicitly last episode, I don't think, but we certainly continue to wish that for all of our listeners and everyone across the world, really.
Yeah. Just want to say, hopefully this pandemic is over sooner than later. I know we're all anxious to get back to normal life. I know I am. It's been pretty tough on me, but like Peter said, stay safe out there, and we wish you the best. So getting on to the game, Pete Boy, why don't you introduce this game to our viewers, or listeners, I should say.
I will do that thing. So this game, some may consider it a classic, but this is none other than the somewhat classic Sonic Adventure 2.
Hell yeah. I remember playing this game in the store at Best Buy or something random like that, where like Sonic would be just like running down the streets with that truck chasing him. And then I believe my cousin had this game as well, and we played the two-player mode a little bit. But other than that, I don't have a huge experience with this game. It's just like those few instances where I'd either play at someone else's house or there was like a demo on the shelves that I would play. So that's kind of my experience with the game.
Yeah, mine is actually even less than that because I had never really played the game myself until last weekend for this review. But I did have a kind of funny indirect experience with it, though, when I was younger, like early high school, late middle school, when I had just gotten my Wii.
Ooh.
And I was wondering what to do with my GameCube. And some of my good friends who lived in my neighborhood used to have a GameCube, but it got broken or lost or something. But they did have a copy of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which is the GameCube port that I also did play for this review. And they didn't have any system to play it on. And so I, being the very generous middle schooler that I was, decided to give them my GameCube because I had gotten the Wii and I didn't need the GameCube anymore because it was, of course, backwards compatible. But they were like, hell yeah, Peter, now we can play this awesome game from our childhood that we love. And I was like, oh, you're so welcome. So they played the game, and I think I saw them play it a few times when I was over at their house just hanging out with them. But I didn't actually play it until now. And actually, the only time I'd ever really spent time with any Sonic game before this was when I was back in like elementary school. One of my cousins was living with us temporarily, and she had a GameCube with the Sonic Mega Collection CD. And on that CD, on that game, I would play Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and like some of those other more retro games.
Right.
But I'd never like beat it or made significant progress. So really, this is like the most time I've ever spent with a Sonic game. Have you played any other Sonic games extensively or anything like that?
I feel like I have played one of the more 2D ones, but not super extensively. So yeah, this might be the most I've ever played of a Sonic game. I could be wrong, but I think that's true.
This is the first Sonic game we've reviewed on the show, and this game actually was originally released for the Dreamcast in 2001, but then it was re-released for the GameCube, or ported rather, to the GameCube in 2002, and it was slightly retitled Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. And it was somewhat of an enhanced port. There were a few things that were enhanced about it, like mainly graphical things, and maybe a few like content things here and there, but nothing too crazy. I did play the GameCube version. Kevin, I believe you said you played it on Steam.
Yeah, actually, there was another port into Steam in like 2012. And that's the version I played. I didn't realize that when I was playing on Steam, but it's pretty much the same as the GameCube version, just a little bit different.
Yeah. I think that's about all the context we need. Are you ready to get into the gameplay?
Sure am. So, to start off, I want to highlight some of the good things. I think a lot of the gameplay was focused around, being quick and speedy, like, fast movements. It felt really smooth and fast at times, moving the character, like Sonic around and all the other characters. I like the fact that you could play as different characters within the Sonic universe.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things to collect and a lot of things to do. It just felt really fast and smooth at times, especially going like, I know this is kind of more of an aesthetic thing, but like going around those rings, like it just looked really flashy and really cool. But it felt really smooth in that aspect. That's pretty much the only good thing I have to say about the gameplay.
Oh no.
Everything else is pretty terrible. The movements looked fast and all, but at least the PC version that I was playing, everything felt way too sporadic. And like, I was just like running into things and losing all my momentum, or like accidentally running off of the platforms, because the way momentum worked was kind of weird. The camera was god awful.
Oh, Jesus, yes.
It was atrocious, which made things even worse. So you'll randomly fall off the stage because you don't know what you're looking at. Furthermore, when you do die, you lose all of your rings. And so or maybe not die, but if I fall off the stage at the end of the level, I'm down to one ring. And then like I complete the level and I have that one ring and my rank is E. So I'm like, well, what the hell? Like I lost everything right before this. So like, of course my rank is going to be bad. So I'm not even sure what the point of that is. I guess you're not supposed to die and complete it with like a high score or whatnot. But I was like, this is pointless and stupid. And the mechanics felt really just awful and kind of, I don't know. Once again, it's more individuals, but like the animation, some of the way the characters moved was just, it felt weird. Like Knuckles, like flying around like that. It just felt really unnatural in his movement.
Yeah. And when he punches as well, his animation can be like really slow for like the speed that his character lunges forward. Or
right.
There's a bunch of like random animation disconnects that I think impacts the gameplay, because what you're seeing isn't really matching up with like the hitboxes or your character's position or things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Overall, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Things just feel unrefined or unfinished even. The camera in particular was probably one of the most frustrating things, because for those who don't know, your control over the camera is limited to when you're standing still. And when you're standing still, you can use the shoulder buttons, or in the case of the GameCube at least, to swivel the camera left and right. But then as soon as you move a step, the camera resets to whatever position it was at. Ugh. So like you have to just use the camera to like look at where you're going to go and then memorize that basically and then continue on your way. And it's like, I mean, I honestly was going to Google the Dreamcast controller layout because I was wondering if that had like a camera stick like the GameCube controller does. Because if it didn't, then it kind of makes sense that the camera was limited that way, but it was just incredibly frustrating.
Editor's note: the Dreamcast controller was indeed lacking a second analog stick for camera control.
And sometimes the camera would just get stuck behind geometry and like you just literally could not see what was happening.
Yeah, the hitbox, the camera had a hitbox, and so that if you like somehow got your camera into like a place it could get stuck in, that was like an issue because you couldn't see anything. That happened one time when I was scaling the walls with Knuckles, and I'd gotten to the ceiling and like my camera got stuck in the ceiling. So I couldn't see anything. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually a thing. So I was like, wow.
I want to talk a little bit, because I think there's like so many little things that I dislike about the gameplay, but I think what will help kind of frame everything and summarize everything is talking about the different types of gameplay that exist in the single player mode. Because in both the hero story and the dark story, you have 3 different characters that you'll play as depending on the level. And each character has a certain type of gameplay or type of level associated with them. So, for example, I think you and I both played the hero story.
Mm-hmm.
in your case, you didn't even finish it because the gameplay was just not good.
Right.
And all I did was finish the hero story because after that, I honestly couldn't take it anymore. But you have on the hero side Sonic, of course,
Right.
and his levels are, fast-paced levels. You're jumping, you're running, you're using your homing attack to hit enemies and traverse obstacles and gaps and things like that. You have Knuckles, who has what you and I agreed to be the worst levels by a landslide, where you have to go find pieces of the Master Emerald or some other thing. And basically on those levels, you're just dumped into this huge level. Yeah. And you have to go around talking to computer monitors that'll give you a hint as to where an emerald piece is. And you have to use that pretty vague hint. Most of the time they're pretty vague. And explore this giant ass level until you find something that resembles the hint. The one thing that helps is that you have a little radar. Well, it's not really a radar, but when you get close to an emerald piece, it'll beep at you. So you can tell when you're getting warm. But still, those levels just take so long for people who don't know where to look right away, which was both of us.
Yeah.
And those levels were the moments where I was like, I am having negative fun right now. I would rather be doing one of any number of other things with my time.
That is so true. I had that exact same thought.
Just bad. But those are the Knuckles levels. And then there's also the Tails levels where Tails is piloting basically just a pair of robot legs with a gun on it.
Yeah.
And you just basically plow through enemies shooting them. And to me, that feels very mindless.
Yes.
For most of those levels, I didn't feel like I had to do anything other than move forward and sometimes move left and right and just mash the B button.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes jump over obstacles. But that's kind of the summary of the different types of gameplay you'll get. And those same gameplay types also match with the dark side, or the dark story. So Shadow the Hedgehog is pretty much the same gameplay-wise as Sonic. Rouge the Bat is matched up with Knuckles, and then Eggman is matched up with Tails. So you and I played roughly half of the game and decided, well, we don't like where this is going at all, and the other half of the game will be very similar to this,
right,
at least in terms of the gameplay, so we didn't feel the need to continue.
Exactly. And I was at the end of the hero side. Basically what had happened was in the very last Knuckles level, I had gotten all of these shards, and I even got these sunglasses and everything so that I could go and find the last one. And it wasn't where it was supposed to be. And the thing was beeping at me that it's telling me it was right there, but I could not find it, could not see it with the sunglasses. Nothing was working. And I looked it up online, and this guy flew right to it and just picked it up and collected it. And I'm looking at the same exact spot, and I'm like, oh my God, it's not here. So somehow I encountered this glitch, and maybe it's not a glitch, but it wasn't immediately apparent to me what I was supposed to do. And that's another thing about this game. It tells you nothing. And if it does tell you something, you have to go and talk to somebody like a robot or something about it. But a lot of times this game doesn't really tell you, especially in the beginning, what you're supposed to be doing and what the context is. And the story's kind of bad, so that you don't really understand the context or what you're supposed to be doing anyways.
Yeah.
So when you're starting out as Knuckles, you're like, okay, what am I doing here? What do each of these things that I'm collecting mean? All of these animals that I'm getting in these levels, what does this mean? I had no attachment to anything, and I was just I feel like there's no purpose. And, later as the game progressed, you're like, okay, I'm starting to see how these things are kind of relevant, but the story wasn't good either. So you're kind of collecting these shards, and I'm not sure. Sometimes they get broken up and scattered, and I'm not sure what we're collecting the shards for.
Yeah. I could tell you, but really it doesn't matter because the story is not really worth bothering with. Yeah. I will say that this is getting into content, so I'll keep it brief, but there are some things about the story that I think are kind of cool, but they just get shafted by the presentation of the game and the lack of clarity. So I think we can talk about that more on the content, but I agree, it's unclear what you're supposed to be doing. In a lot of levels, the goal is just get to the end.
Right. But
even then, the level design makes it difficult to see where you have to go to get to the end in the first place. There's just ambiguous directions, or you have to make jumps that you can't see the other side of it necessarily unless you mess with the god-awful camera. Just Man, this game was a fucking chore, dude. I hate to say it.
It really was. It was hard to get through it. I was actually expecting to have a decent amount of fun playing it, but sadly, I can't say that I did.
Yeah, I mean, all of our like contemporaries who grew up with this game and love it, at least on some level, like it's got to be because they were kids.
Yeah,
you know? Like
it definitely has to have a nostalgic factor here. And to talk about the Tales levels a little bit, you're right. They kind of felt like mindless and pointless at times. And like you're just mashing the B button, and it explains that, oh, you can hold the button to like, lock on to targets, and you don't have to release it immediately. Well, for most of the game that you don't need to do that. In fact, it's better to just spam. But
yeah,
at the very last Tales level, it gets put into use a little bit better in that you hold it so that you don't blow everything up, because that could end up hurting you.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's at the very, like near the very end of the game in the last Tales level, only then do you get punished for just mashing the B button constantly.
Right.
And I was like, okay, like now I'm having to use my brain. This actually is more fun and more engaging. But it took the entirety of the hero story to get to that point. And I was like, well, what a waste of the other levels.
Yeah, and I know Tails is supposed to be some like super smart, mechanical genius. But I also really like Tails' ability to fly and things like that. So I kind of wish that was utilized a little bit more, other than the like overworld that you got to play with him in.
Yeah.
And the robot's the robot's really slow. So you're like, ugh. Like, I don't want to. He did have a fun level, however, where you're like racing. And even though that wasn't implemented the best, it was still kind of fun for me.
Yeah, I think the controls of the vehicle were quite bad. They certainly weren't like any kart racing game quality control, which was made obvious when I tried the multiplayer kart mode. And I was like, oh, this control is just as bad as it did in the one player game. Not surprised there. But it was kind of a fun little diversion for the few minutes that lasted.
You can perform a glitch to where you drift in such a way where you run into the wall, and like when you continue, your car is going backwards. So you can drive through the rest of the level backwards, but it's as if you were driving forward.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You got to swag backwards.
Swag backwards.
So another big problem I had with the gameplay was the enemies. I found that the normal enemies in the levels were pretty bland. I mean, most of them are just like pretty generic robots that Robotnik uses.
Mm-hmm.
And they just seem so non-threatening for the vast majority of the game. Like they take forever to attack you. And when they do, you can generally avoid them pretty easily. And in the Tails levels, especially if you're just mashing B, then the enemies are usually of little to no consequence to you. The point in the game where they start becoming a problem is the point where they start like spawning right in front of you as you're running. And then it's like, well, this is just artificial difficulty because I had so little time to react. And
ghosts.
The ghosts, and like I think in the jungle level was the first time where like I'm running through a Sonic and then suddenly robots start falling from the foliage. And I'm like, well, this fucking sucks because there's nothing I can do about it. So not only are the normal enemies just poorly implemented, but the boss battles, oh my god, they're either stupid easy or just stupid.
Yeah.
And I think the worst offender was the Rouge fight when you're Knuckles fighting against Rouge. Rouge just runs around like at the same speed that you do, which I mean kind of makes sense, but is frustrating to fight against. And like her attacks are like poorly telegraphed, and like it's unclear how to avoid them. And there's just so much shit going on in the battle that it's such a fucking nightmare. Like, and then on the other side of it, like when I was fighting Eggman near the very end of the game as Tails, like Eggman and Tails were having kind of a robot leg shootout. It was easy, and I beat it in like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Wow. Like the bosses are so janky, and the one cool boss I think is like the big King Tut statue.
Oh, I was about to say that one was super easy for me, but it was fun. I will say that much.
Yeah, that one felt like the only one that was like designed with any sort of intent or like vision as to how the battle would go.
Yeah, I don't think I took very minimal damage against that boss, and I was like, man, that felt really, really easy. But the first boss, Shadow, like I didn't know what the hell was going on, so like I fell off more than anything with that small little battle platform.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of things like that. Yeah, I agree with you. The boss battles were uneventful, to say the least, and just kind of dumb.
The things I did like about gameplay, not so much like gameplay mechanics that I enjoyed, because I thought most, if not all of them, were implemented pretty shoddily. But I did say that at the very beginning of the game, when you're Sonic snowboarding or whatever down the streets of what appears to be San Francisco, knocking over cars and avoiding trucks that are chasing you, I did feel like that was pretty fun. It was a really good tone setter. And the soundtrack was pretty dope for that level, which we'll talk about when we get into the audio section. And then the end of the game, actually the very last couple of levels, some of them still had very, very frustrating moments that I wouldn't want to play again. But there are also some cool elements, like the very last level in the hero story, you are basically like grinding on these rails that are suspended in space. And it's like very scenic and very cool. And it's kind of a long level, and it does become pretty repetitive, and then it becomes boring. But the setting of the level and kind of the change up in the gameplay from what I was used to was actually pretty fun. And it felt good for the game to end on a fairly strong, and I say this with 5 pairs of air quotes, fairly strong gameplay. it felt like a decent ending. But other than those like little highlight moments, I definitely spent a lot of the game saying this is bullshit out loud as I was playing it.
Dude, I said the same thing. And it's kind of extra bad because it was really hard to find a time to play this. But I played it a little bit during Katie and Chris's work day, and it was really hard to keep myself quiet because I was like, oh my fucking God. But yeah, I hear you. I think the moral of the story is the gameplay was very frustrating.
Yes. This also relates to content, maybe more so than it does to gameplay, but I think I should mention it here too, is that there is kind of a side, not a quest, but like a side element to the game, which is raising your Chow pets. I think that's how you say it, Chow, or
right.
I'm not sure. You can collect these pets over the course of the game, and then you can use items you get during the main levels to raise them and increase their abilities in certain categories. And then you can enter your Chow into like little contests like racing or karate against other Chows, like AI Chows or maybe even player Chows. I'm not quite sure how that works. But my problem was that over the course of my playthrough of the hero story, which took like 4 to 5 hours for me to finish, all said and done, my Chow did not hatch from its egg. And this was a Chow that I'd gotten like pretty early in the game. So I was like, okay, this kind of sucks because I spent 4 to 5 hours beating this game and my Chow is still not hatched. And I'm pretty sure you can't speed up their hatching. Like you can do things to make them like turn into good Chow or dark Chow or whatever. But I didn't have the opportunity to do that, at least as far as I know. And so I was like, well, I'm certainly not going to play more of this game to like experience this little Neopets thing, which seems like a shame because I know that this feature of the game was a big selling point for it and people were really stoked about it back in the day. But I think just nowadays there's very little appeal to it. And to me, it's certainly not worth slogging through the rest of the game to experience this side thing.
Right. I kind of agree. So for me, when I was considering ranking it, you already know by now that I don't view this very highly. I had to basically consider 2 other games. I had to consider Yooka-Laylee and Chopper Attack because those are my lowest ranking games for gameplay. And I was like, okay, do I rank it higher or lower than Yooka-Laylee or higher or lower than Chopper Attack or vice or whatever? And so the consensus I came up with was that I was going to rank it lower than Yooka-Laylee, but slightly higher than Chopper Attack. What do you think about that?
I disagree with half of that statement, but you can go ahead and give your score. And when I give my score, you'll find out which part I disagree with.
Yeah. I gave it a 67 and Chopper Attack was a 65. You know, I got through but here's where I'm hung up on it though. I got through most of Chopper Attack without saying I want to give up on this game completely. So I'm questioning that score a little bit. You know what? Let's give it a 64. You've convinced me. 64.
64. That's a good number. Good old power of 2.
I'm gonna modify that on my
all right
thing.
Well, I thought this game was much worse in gameplay than both Yooka-Laylee and Chopper Attack because while Chopper Attack has limited gameplay, I actually think the gameplay in that game is pretty fun. I actually enjoy playing that game, and it might be nostalgia too because I grew up with it, even though it's not a game that has nostalgic appeal for many people. And then Yooka-Laylee, while there were things wrong with the gameplay, I overall felt it was a pretty solid foundation.
I agree.
And like I never got nearly as frustrated with that game as I did with Sonic Adventure 2. So it is with a certain amount of pleasure.
Oh, I'm excited.
A certain amount of pleasure. I give this game a 45 for gameplay.
Damn. Yo, breaking IG history here. Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Stand up for what you believe in.
I hate to do it to your boy Sonic Adventure 2, but hot damn, I did not enjoy the gameplay.
Yes, it really looks like it. I think for me, the saving grace, somewhat of a saving grace, is the Sonic side is playable and is fun to an extent, but still the gameplay is not great. I did have fun in very few moments, and the speediness and quickness of the game made it feel really flashy and fun at times. But yeah, you're right. It sucked.
Yeah, it's like there's some amount of potential here that I can't deny, but they just failed to like make it reach anywhere near that potential. And there's just so many like bad decisions and lack of refinement all around. It really makes me think about how, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any 3D Sonic game ever that has been like universally praised, at least for gameplay.
Right, and I thought this was the one.
Yeah,
I thought this was
too.
the one that everybody loved.
Well, I don't know. Maybe Dolphin Dasher, our good friend who used to speedrun this game. I don't think he's done it in a while.
Who could blame him?
I did enjoy watching his speedruns, but I wonder what he'll have to say about our thoughts on this game.
Yeah, he might not be too happy, but that's okay.
There are more thoughts we have. Chief among those is the
aesthetics. Yeah, so why don't you talk about the visuals a little bit?
I will do that. I'm not sure where to start here. I'll start with some positives. I do think the visuals. Well, first of all, I'll say gameplay for me is easily the worst category, so it's uphill from here.
Okay, I would hope so.
I'll definitely give it a 10 for visuals. I did think there was a pretty good variety of environments in the game. This is something we talk about a lot. But you get your city escape level, you get some desert levels, you get your space levels, your highway levels. So there's like a good amount of variety there. And then there's more in the dark story too that unfortunately neither of us got to for aforementioned reasons. But I thought they did a good job of representing some of those different environments that you might like to see in a video game. There's a lot of eye candy in the levels, actually, at least in certain levels, mostly towards the end of the game when you're up in space. There's some like pretty cool stuff going on with the design of the levels and the details and things like that. But the issue is that it can become very hard to see where you're going.
Yeah.
Which, especially when you're playing as Sonic, the fast blue mouse, when you can't see where you're going, shit becomes pretty difficult pretty quickly. So that was like a pretty big sacrifice that I think was made, and I question it.
Right.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree about the environments thing. For the most part, it was, decently good looking. I wouldn't say it's like beautiful.
Yeah.
Especially what I played was like, had my fancy graphics card running this pretty old game. So that was kind of hilarious. So the textures to me kind of looked odd and outdated. I don't think the game aged well visually. I know when they remade it and ported it over, they tried to enhance it graphically, but I can think of a lot of other GameCube games that look a lot better than this. And for this to be the port that I played was a 2012 port, and for it to look like that in 2012 is kind of unacceptable. So that kind of sucks, but and I also watched a video of like the graphic differences between each versions, and there was some things where the Dreamcast did it better, and the cutscenes were not very good at all. Also, the President of the United States.
Oh my god. Dude, what's funny is that the humans in the in-game cutscenes were blessedly few and far between, because otherwise my eyes would have vomited. But even in the pre-rendered cutscenes, because this game has both,
Oh, God.
the pre-rendered cutscenes, the humans looked terrible. Like there's one point where Eggman is giving some, doomsday warning on a billboard in New York City or whatever.
Yeah.
And this little poor girl in pigtails is like clutching her mom's dress, and she just looks like a fucking clay caricature ugly. And I'm like, oh, I do not feel sympathy for you, you poor thing. So,
except that you probably need to be put out of your misery, maybe.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
Yeah, the cutscenes were not great. Like the attempts at lip syncing in the in-game cutscenes were also pretty bad, which is more forgivable because that was not the greatest technology back then. But again, I feel like I've seen GameCube games that have done that better.
Oh, for sure.
And we mentioned also earlier some of the animations during gameplay looking pretty lazy or unfinished. I don't really have any details to add to that. But overall, I think like the environments of the game are what carry it visually. And then the character animations and the cutscenes kind of like bring it back down to mediocrity-ish.
Yeah. Also, the lighting in this game was not that great. Especially when you compare the Dreamcast version to the version that we played. It's like there's a lot of special effects that went missing, I guess mainly because it was ported over. And then, they're much darker. Like the lighting is much darker in the ported version. So I find that to be pretty surprising. Yeah. Some of the graphical enhancements they were trying to make, including increasing the frame rate, which they did from the Dreamcast to the GameCube. They went from 30 to 60. Some of the sacrifices they had to make were the character models and like having them move, they weren't able to be as flexible or move as much. And you can kind of tell they look like they could hardly move at all. It's like, oh my God.
I was thinking that had to be a trade-off that they made because, I mean, one of the good things about this game visually is that it does run at a crisp 60 FPS, at least the enhanced ports, which I think is like really important for a Sonic game. So
for sure,
they did get that right, but the cost, I was looking at these character models and the animations and stuff, and I was like, these have way too few polygons for a GameCube game, man. Like they must have done this for the sake of the frame rate. So if that is true, I would certainly not be surprised.
Well, they increased the amount of polygons, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Dreamcast version had like pointy Sonic ears, and then this one, they had like rounded ones. So, I mean, if you think it looks atrocious, it probably looked even worse on the Dreamcast. But the special effects and the lighting, I think they got right on the Dreamcast. But yeah, so there were trade-offs here and there, but I don't think it looks outstanding visually, but they did get some things right.
Yeah.
I'll have to show you at some point, like what it looks like running on my PC. I think you'd be interested to see that.
I'm going to have to find the whole graphics off of it and I'm going to have to get it.
You have to get it.
I do think this is kind of inherent to like the mixture of cartoony characters and more realistic environments, so to speak. And this is something we kind of talked about too in our last episode, comparing Mario to like the normal humans and Mario Odyssey. But there are some points where like you're playing the game and you're like this very colorful but kind of flat looking character like Sonic or Knuckles. And then you'll be in like a much more detailed environment with darker lighting and all this stuff. And sometimes it just feels super disconnected. And I'm not sure exactly what they could have done to improve that, because I think that they were always like, I think they were definitely shooting for these characters living in a more realistic world, which I think is a questionable decision in the first place. And I still am not sold on it, even in the modern games. But it's just kind of interesting to see that how they implemented that in this somewhat old game.
Yeah, I kind of agree. They could have definitely just kept it more cartoony.
Yeah, I think that they were definitely trying to like have some sort of edgy teenage kid appeal, and I'm pretty sure that the decision to have them interact with like real humans and stuff was probably part of that.
Yeah.
What's up with the random Halloween area?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, like what the fuck?
The pumpkin patch. This is the pumpkin garden. This is the pumpkin tower. Okay. What do I do here? Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely.
Like it had no relevance. Yeah, that level was extremely dumb because most of that level didn't matter, especially the towers. And there were a lot of things, this might go into gameplay a little more, but there was a lot of like the Knuckles levels where areas that have like all this stuff that you could do in them, but it just didn't matter because all that really mattered was the emeralds and stuff.
So I do know, and this isn't obvious on your first playthrough, so I think I only knew this from watching Dolphin's speedruns and also from Googling, is that the emeralds will be in random places every time.
Oh, okay.
So that's why you're seeing these like areas that are not used in your particular playthrough, which is also a questionable decision.
Yeah.
My last comment on the visuals, and this is a positive actually, I should have started with this earlier, but I guess we're ending on a high note for me, is that I do like the design of the main menu. I thought it was pretty cool and colorful, and it seems like they honestly put a lot of effort into designing that menu, especially because you can choose from like 6 or 7 different characters to apply their theme to the main menu. So like their character will provide the voiceover for whenever you click on something, and like their color scheme and all that stuff will be applied. I feel like for some reason in the GameCube era during this time, there was like a lot of emphasis on making cool menus. So I do think that's a plus that this game has visually.
Yeah, and also the scene transitions going from the overworld to starting a level where they're like stage G6 or whatever, and they tell you the level, that little screen animation that they give you, it was really nice, I thought.
Yeah.
The classic Sonic. That's all I got, though.
Same, TBH.
All right, well, why don't you give your score, B-boy?
I gave the visuals a hot, fresh, cold, stale 70.
Dude, I gave it a 70.
Oh my God.
Dude, we are in sync right now. Maybe not because you went
my
ham
gameplay
on the
was
gameplay. Damn. Well, I guess moving on to the audio, I am happy to take this one away.
Do it.
Because once again, this is another atrocious section. I'm not sure they did, for me, in my opinion, I'm not sure they did much right other than the very first level song. And maybe I only think that because I recognize it and know it. But if you're talking about soundtracks, like none of the soundtrack really fit the game. I know they kind of went for like a hip hop vibe and feel, but I just like, maybe it's because the graphics weren't that great. I mean, they were okay. I guess like the soundtrack it just didn't fit. Like when I'm in a pyramid and I'm like hearing hip hop with like playing as Knuckles, I'm just like, what is going on? Like, why is this audio here? Not to mention the horrible voice acting this game has.
Hell yeah, brother.
Oh my God. Like I looked up the reception for this game and everybody's complaint is the voice acting. It is just so bad and so cheesy. Oh my goodness. Why? It's painful. I skipped through most of the cutscenes where they were talking because I was like, I cannot do this.
I made sure to like keep my eyes and my ears wide open to just ingest every molecule that I could of the voice acting. To be honest, I didn't hate a lot of it, but I thought Tails was far and away the least tolerable out of everyone. Tails was the one who like almost sent me over the edge.
Tails, and then who's the girl? What's her name again?
Rouge the Bat? Or Amy?
Amy's really bad too. Oh my goodness. Shadow's probably the best one, but even then it's kind of like over exaggerated. Yeah. Like every other voice actor in this game.
Yeah, so let me comment quickly on the things you said. Well, I guess I did comment on voice acting just now. I thought it was mediocre at best and god awful at worst. I, however, kind of disagree with you on the music. Now, hear me out.
Okay.
Because I'm sure you're thinking that I'm crazy.
A little bit.
I respect the ambition because they got, musicians, lyricists, vocalists to come in and like write like actual songs with words for their video game, which I think they may have done for Sonic Adventure 1. I'm not sure. And I'm not saying that the execution was great, but I am saying I admire the ambition. And actually, I think that nowadays, especially the hip hop tracks, they definitely have like that super duper corny appeal to them where you're like, this is so ridiculous that I actually kind of like it. And that's what I was feeling when I was in the pyramid as Knuckles, listening to this saxophone sexy ass beat. I'm like, for being stuck in this goddamn dumbass hell fucking nightmare level, at least I got some smooth jams to ease the pain. And I want to talk specifically about the Knuckles songs because they have some of the funniest stuff going on in them, thanks to the beautiful vocals provided by the rapper whose name I don't remember. But in one of the earlier levels, I think it might be the first Knuckles level where you face off against Rouge and you're in the canyon or whatever. And there's some lines in the lyrics that go something like, Rouge, she's so sexy and smooth. And I'm like, all right, this is a kid's game, but carry on. And then sometime later, at another point in the song, he says, give me back my emeralds or die. I don't love you. I was like, what the hell is that? Give me back my emeralds or die. I don't love you. Like, wow. Okay, cool. This is a...
And you thought that was good?
I thought it was notable.
Okay.
See, we're laughing about it. It has some value.
Yeah, you're right. It has some comedic value.
And then there's another in a different song at some point in the game. It's one of the other Knuckles songs. There's like the one rapper is simulating a conversation between Knuckles and Sonic within the song. And they're basically Sonic is trying to convince Knuckles that they should work together, even though they're enemies for some reason, which again isn't clear.
Yeah, it's not clear at all.
Sonic is like, yo, Knuckles, we should work together. And then Knuckles is like, yeah, I guess you're right. And then Sonic says, you damn right, Knuckles. It's like, cool. I didn't know that was within Sonic's character, but whatever. We'll roll with it. So yeah, the music is pretty amusing. Some of the instrumental tracks aren't bad. I feel like they have some pretty cool vibes and pretty cool melodies that I found myself humming along to. You mentioned the City Escape soundtrack. It's the one that goes like, follow me, set me free.
Yeah.
So good song. Also, we can't talk about the music without talking about Live and Learn, which is like the main theme for this game. It plays in the intro cutscene, whatever. I would say that's an iconic song. For better or for worse, I would say that like that song has stuck with the Sonic series and has become iconic. And I think it is kind of a jam. It's like an early 2000s rock song, edgy jam. I'm here for it. I really am.
Okay. Yeah, with the exception of a few songs, I guess, I think they're all pretty shitty, but but you're right. They have some comedic value to them. One thing that I think that needs to be discussed in regards to audio in this game is Tails' stupid robot homing thing where he goes, beep. And you're like, I never want to hold the button for this because it's annoying. And even when you're spamming it, it's annoying. So I had to actually mute it very often when I was playing this game.
Yeah, I honestly remember that from watching Dolphin Dasher speedruns, because I'd be like, not actually watching, I'd be doing something else and just listening, and I hear this incessant beeping, and I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And I tune into a stream again, and I see just the spamming of the B button. I was like, okay, well, this is possibly the worst sound effect decision I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite as bad as the Zelda beeping hearts thing, but this was just... Ugh.
Among many other bad decisions with audio, yeah, that was one of them. I'm pretty sure Bella was getting pretty restless from me playing those Tails levels. Like, she was not having a good time. So, yeah, that was one thing I just could not stand as well. So, if you think about the three categories here, soundtrack, voice acting, and sound effects, nothing did well for me at all. Maybe soundtracks were the best part, but everything on, and I love my sound effects, so.
Yeah. My last comment, for some reason I don't know why I felt this way, but I did kind of enjoy talking to the little Chow robots in the stages who would give you hints. There's something like I found really endearing about their cute little like boyish voice, like, make sure to destroy the robots or else they'll destroy you first, or whatever. I was like, thanks, little buddy. Like, I appreciate it. I don't know why it was, because like, the other voice actors who had maybe similar voices like Tails does, I found Tails insufferable. But then my little Chow buddies, I was like, yeah, you can talk to me. Like, what's up? What do you have to say? So I don't know why I feel that way, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think a part of the problem for me too, playing this game, is I would skip over every cutscene. So I feel like I missed out on some areas that potentially could have been better than others. But I think for the most part, I got the gist of it and that it was all pretty bad. Like when they were talking, not only was the voice acting bad, but it was just like poorly edited. And like you said, the lips don't match up with it. And you're just like, oh my God, I can't watch this.
Did you ever notice that characters would interrupt each other when they were?
Yeah, I did a little.
I got that too. I was wondering if it was like some sort of glitch or something.
No, probably. I mean,
Probably not.
maybe not intended design, but oof.
Yeah. Well, are you ready to wrap up the audio?
Yeah, let's do it. I think we've been harping on it for long enough. I gave it a 60.
I gave it a 75.
Okay.
For me, it was the music. I honestly appreciate the effort. So.
Okay. Well, moving on to the last section, content. Why don't you take it away? Purely because you probably encountered more content than I did by a slight margin.
I did indeed. So my best friend, how long to beat? They're a cool person. I asked them how long it would take me to beat this game, and they said about 9.5 hours average for the base level completion. As I said, I feel like it took me about 4 to 5 to beat the hero story, which is about half the game, or half of the base level of the game, because there's more content after that. So I found that was pretty accurate. Between the hero and the dark stories, I think there's about 30-ish individual levels, which is a pretty decent number. And each level also has multiple missions associated with it. You and I, we were just doing the basic playthrough, and during the course of that, you only ever have to beat each level quote unquote normally. So with the Sonic levels and the Tails levels, you basically just get to the end. And with the Knuckles levels, you collect the stuff. But if you go back to those levels, there's more missions you can do, complete it with this many rings, or complete it with such and such speed, or maybe even some things like find this thing in the level before you complete it, something like that. I honestly didn't do a whole lot of research into this, but there is extra content there to get you to come back and complete all these other missions. And as you complete more and more of these missions, you start to unlock things like new characters for the versus mode or things like that. So they do get you to come back and reward you. And I honestly think it would be pretty cool if the gameplay weren't so bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has the potential to be the best part about the game is the content, but you're right. The gameplay and everything else made me not want to ever touch this game beyond what I had to. So, it's kind of hard for me to rate the content. I know there's a lot of things to do. There's collectibles. There's multiple different modes. There's a battle mode. I think you can do a lot of racing with, multiple people and things like that. There's, a hero and was it dark mode? I think that's what it's called. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But you get to play a different set of characters. That's cool. So there's a lot of extra content there, and even replaying the game, I think there's a lot of value in that too. You can get a higher score, you can get it faster. The game tracks that for you. The ranking system, while it's poorly implemented, I feel like it creates a certain challenge to get a good rank. And to get a good rank, you have to not die essentially, or die at the beginning of the level. And even then it's probably not good, but I got an E rank almost in every level.
Yeah, me too.
Except for the driving level, which I think I got a C. So that was my highest rank. And I was like, this is incredibly dumb. Especially when I'd fall. There was one level where I fell off and I got one ring because I fell off at the end. And it was just, yeah, I think the story is just so bad. It's just so bad. At one point, Dr. Eggman blows up the moon, and I'm not really sure why. And what the point of that was.
So I did some research into the story because I felt that I just had to read it on paper to pass just a little bit better judgment. So basically the short version is Eggman was trying to take over the world, which is, business as usual. And his grandpa had built some super weapon that Eggman stole from the government. And the government thought that Sonic had stolen it when actually Shadow had helped Eggman steal it or something like that. So that's why Sonic gets kidnapped in the first place, or kidnapped by the government. Blah, 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 yada, yada. Rouge and Knuckles are fighting over the Master Emerald because it turns out Rouge is a spy for the government, and she only pretends to be affiliated with Eggman. And she's trying to give him the emeralds to gain his trust so that she can betray him later. So that's actually some fairly cool depth that I did not get at all while I was playing the game. To be fair, I only played the hero mode, maybe the dark side of the story. The dark side of the story is a pathway to many narratives that people would. So maybe I would have gotten it from there. But basically, Eggman blew up the moon to show to the U.S. government or whatever government that he had the power to blow up the Earth, and that was just his little show of force. And he was like, meet my demands in 24 hours or else I'll turn the laser on the planet.
Is it possible to learn the rest of this story?
Not from the gameplay. So, and then Shadow has some redemption arc. Like, he's not actually a bad guy. He was misguided or whatever. This game also introduced Shadow to the Sonic universe. So,
True.
So good, I guess. Shadow.
I do love Shadow. He's really cool.
Our cool, edgy boy. Had his own video game, which maybe we should try at some point. Maybe better or worse than this one.
Can it get worse? And like, I'm kind of, from this game, I'm like hesitant to play any more Sonic games, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. Especially if this is the one that's like the most favored.
Exactly. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, to get back onto like the game's actual content, the multiplayer options do seem pretty cool, kind of like you were saying.
Yeah.
Basically, I think they have a mode that corresponds to each type of level in the single player game. So like you can play like the Sonic and Shadow level where you race against each other, and then there's like collecting the emerald pieces before the other person and whatever, which I think is a cool idea. Again, if the gameplay were better, I'd be more of a fan of it. And then you have the Chao Garden, which I spoke about in gameplay, but again, I couldn't really experience that because my egg didn't hatch over the course of the time I spent with the game, and I certainly was not going to spend any more time on this game just for that. But I mean, people loved it back in the day, and it seems like, if people were really into Neopets or whatever, then this is like kind of this game's version of that. So that's actually pretty cool content, just attached to a game that I don't care to play anymore. Yeah,
it seems like in terms of our perspective, it had the greatest potential. So I agree with that. If the gameplay had been good, it probably would have been even better. Now, if gameplay aside, if the story had been good, I'd probably, that would give it some more points too. But alas, the story wasn't. So that's going to dock some points for me. And I think we've got a good consensus on how to rank it.
I agree, man. And I'm ready to rank it if you're finished.
Yeah, I am. Why don't you go ahead?
I gave it actually a pretty good score. I gave it an 80 for content.
An 80, nice. Actually, it was my highest score too. I gave it a 75, so not too far from the mark there.
I agree. So as usual, we seem to be pretty in agreement, but we did have some differences in the gameplay and the audio. But how those differences come out in the wash, you'll have to find out after this 3-second break. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Interstate Gamers podcast, shitty video game edition. You rarely see it, but when you do, it's a treat. So speaking of this video game, let's go over our scores. I'll start, as usual. I gave gameplay a 45, which is pretty atrocious. Not gonna lie to you. I gave visuals a 70, and then audio a 65. Those two together average out to an aesthetics of 72.5. And the content, I gave an 80, so actually a pretty good score. Bringing my average of everything to a 65.8.
Nice. I gave gameplay a 64. It might be a little bit generous, but somebody enjoys this gameplay, so kudos to them. Visuals, I gave a 70. In audio, I gave a 60, bringing my aesthetics score to a 65. And then the content was a 75, bringing my score to a 68. So we're not too far off on our scores here. That brings our overall score for the game to be a 66.9, which is tragically 1.1 points higher than Chopper Attack.
Oh, no.
So it is the second lowest game on our rankings list.
It's interesting because, and I think you agree with me, but tell me if you don't, that I think both of us had at least, I enjoyed playing Chopper Attack. I'm not going to lie to you. I think the game really suffers in some departments, but I think it's actually a fairly fun game. And you were saying to me that you definitely felt more frustrated with Sonic Adventure 2 than you did with Chopper Attack. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's interesting that, like, you know, obviously gameplay is not the only part of a game.
Right.
But for both of us, and for me in particular, the gameplay for this game was just so poor that neither of us want to touch this game again. Despite that, it still ranks a little bit above Chopper Attack in some regards. So it's interesting to see how all that shakes out. I was thinking earlier about how Dolphin Dasher, our good buddy, speedruns this game. And I feel like this game would actually be way more fun as a speed game than as a casual game. Because I feel like when you're speedrunning it, you're already familiar with all the jank. You know how to work around it.
Exactly.
And like you can feel kind of like a good feeling of triumph over this disaster of a video game. Just beating the shit out of it,
right,
and getting to the end and being like, hell yeah, it only took me 30 minutes or whatever. I don't actually know how long it takes. And to be honest, obviously we had negative opinions of most parts of this game, but there were some things that it did at least decently. And this game means a lot to a lot of people out there. So I don't want to like come across as being like some evil video game reviewer. But I have to call it as I see it. And you and I agree for the most part that this game is not very enjoyable.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you're familiar with the gameplay and you know how to work around it, it'll be really fun to make this game move really fast, because this game moves really fast. So I can see how it's fun as a speed game. But yeah, I believe when I was playing it, I texted you. I was like, oh my God, this game is so unbearable. I was like, I don't think I could play much more of this. And then I looked up how long the game was and like how many levels there were. And I was most of the way through it. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to power through and finish it. But when like the emerald disappeared, I was like, no, I'm done. I can't.
Yeah.
Especially like I'm not going to replay another Knuckles level either. So I'm just like, I think I got far enough into the game. I got the gist of it. I even tried playing and watching some videos on the 2-player battle stuff. I feel like I got a pretty good grasp on it, and I don't think we're too far from the Metacritic score of this. We're a little bit lower, I think, than how the public views it, but at least the GameCube version. But yeah, definitely an interesting game to review for sure. I did like Chopper Attack better, and I even ranked the gameplay higher. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. What we collectively did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Chopper Attack visuals were in the ballpark of Sonic Adventure 2 battle gameplay. So yeah, it is interesting to see how they kind of rank together. And, you know, they're similar score and fashion. So I wouldn't say that, you know, one is exponentially better than the other. So,
you know, that's one fun thing about doing this show is that we have these numbers, and then seeing the way that the numbers match or don't match with our deepest personal feelings is always pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe gameplay is the most important category for a video game. I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe. Who knows? I've thought about this before. Not conclusive.
This is based upon your scaling of what makes a good video game.
This is. Maybe my logic is flawed. I hope it's not, because I'm very happy with it. But
I like it.
We'll see. My last comment about this video game, I was thinking of like, what's the meanest way I can convey my feelings for this game.
Oh no.
I was thinking, if someone told me that I had to spend my entire weekend playing this game outside of sleeping and eating and all that, I would rather skip the weekend. I would rather go straight into the next work week. I'm lucky enough to have a good job that I enjoy, so right. I have that privilege, but damn, there was like 8 other things I would rather do with my time than play this game.
Right.
And I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, that's pretty harsh. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. Can't imagine we'll be replaying this game anytime soon. Sorry, Dolphin. We didn't seem to enjoy it, but you know, that's what opinions are for.
I agree, man.
Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. It was a great episode in my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
It was a lot of fun.
So at least we had more fun rating it than we did playing it. If you liked our content, consider contributing to our Patreon. This helps and supports us, keeps us going, keeps us reviewing more games, shitty games, awesome games, and telling you how we think they stack up against all the other games of all time. I'm really impressed with our list. We're almost at 40 games now, which is kind of nuts to think about, but
damn.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I love looking at this list. It's just to see how it's grown and to see how these games stack up against each other is just really cool.
Who are the beautiful patrons that we have to thank for their support?
I'm glad you asked. We have Mallory Sutton, Ryan Everett, Simon Webb, and your boy Z-Link.
Has the Trinity grown to a...
The Trinity has grown.
To a quadrinity?
It has indeed.
Beautiful.
So shout outs to those people. You keep us going. We definitely greatly appreciate your support.
One would say that we appreciate it as always.
As always. If you want to see our rankings and things like that, head over to the igcast.com. It's this cool website that I've put together that you can not only listen to our episodes, but you can check out the rankings and how they stack up against each other. And they have some pretty cool breakdowns. So be sure to check that out. We've got some social media that you can follow us on. Twitter, we're pretty, we're okay active there. The IG_casts, I believe, is our Twitter handle. Add us what you think about these episodes. And we'll be sure to respond. We've got an Instagram and a Facebook that you can follow us on as well, where we make frequent posts about the episodes and what's going on with the IG cast. Yeah, it's been a pretty fun season.
It has been a fun season. It's not over yet. We've still got some great episodes coming your way. As always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. This will be the conclusion of this wonderful episode. Hope you have a good rest of your day or night, and love you too.
Love you too, guys. Oh my God, I love this episode. I love everything about it.
It's so fun, just like rip into...
Sometimes you need that, you know? Sometimes you need that.
Yeah.